Well, the podcast today is going to be brought to you as an unedited version. Now, if you watch on YouTube, then you're going to be quite familiar with my dog barking, with there being no intro and no outro, the door going for parcels. But if you listen on Spotify, you are used to having an edited version. It's more slick. There's an intro, there's an outro. The dog's barking's been removed as best you can. But because we are in COVID-19 and I'm self-employed, I'm having to streamline everything that I do. So I'm streamlining how many episodes I get edited. And quite frankly, it's really nice to do that because it means that you're getting stuff on the day that I'm doing it, which means I don't have to wait for an edit. So I'm very excited about that. And I'm very excited about today's guest, who has come onto the podcast because it came to my attention earlier this week that there's going to be lots of people that are really struggling in this particular pandemic. I say that as if there's, one all the time. It's not a particular pandemic, it is the pandemic. I became very concerned about some of the things that I was hearing around care experienced people, care leavers, and looked after children. And some of the things that have been coming up are things that I guess I hadn't necessarily thought about, like, for example, we'll get into all that. Hey, so I did a little ring round to all the organisations that I know who are all in different places and thinking about things in different ways. And I think that's the way that actually the country is at the moment. Some people are taking a step back, having a think, some are reacting straight in, and we're all doing different things. Had a chat with today's guest, and they've really gone straight in to being responsive. So it's with great pleasure, no further ado, that I'm going to introduce Kim Cormack from the Rees Foundation. Rees Foundation are a national organisation working with care experienced people of all ages. Welcome to the podcast, Kim.
Hello.
It's good to see you. It's very good to see you and to have you here for our very impromptu pandemic chat.
Yeah, it's nice to see a friendly face.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? The ways that we are having to connect, identifying how much connection we actually need, who we want to connect with, how we can do that. And I guess that sort of really falls in nicely with thinking about what is that going to look like if you are living quite vulnerably, vicariously, as I've said lots of times this week, if you are on the edge of the cliff, when something like this happens, you are on the edge of the cliff. So I guess what would be really useful would be to talk a little bit about what the last 4 weeks have looked like for you personally, but also what they've looked like for Rees Foundation.
Oh, which one would you like first?
You just go with the flow. That's how we roll here.
I think let's start with Rees. I think so. I've also talked to the rest of the team. We've been quite good at adapting to conference calls and Zoom and the like. So that's good because a few of us are technophobes. So quite grateful that it worked out. So I've talked to the rest of the team about their insight. So we cover different departments. So I predominantly do the arts projects, although I'm quite interested, and my background is like in education and mental health. So we kind of work together in a team of most things. But I've spoken to Kerry, who is in charge of, we recently started a housing project. It was under our sister charity, Welland, but now we're all working together. And specifically, how that's affected care experienced people that we're trying to house. So Kerry got back to me and actually said that specifically there was one story that stood out, that there's a young man who is currently in custody, who we've been supporting. So the team does go into certain prisons to reach out to care experienced people, It's strange, a lot of the time the guards don't actually know that they're care experienced. So it's just when people actually go in and start running a workshop that like the word gets around and, oh, I didn't know that's even what I was. Like that's the terminology. So we usually help people so that if they've got a release date coming up, we can support them. We'll find them somewhere to live, or maybe help them get a job, put things in place to have a support network so they won't reoffend or feel isolated, and kind of break that cycle. So there's one young man who we were ready to house, and he's only a few weeks away from coming out, and obviously now he won't be coming out, and he's going to stay in prison a little bit longer till this all blows over, which I can imagine is very difficult, very difficult. And there's only so much that we can do regarding, you know, we obviously can't speak to them face to face, but we can speak to them through the guards and things like that, and do like check-ins and their welfare and things like that. But it's very difficult. There's the government guidelines have changed so that there's not many options for contact to check on welfare and well-being.
I mean, there's not actually very many guidelines have come out at all, really, have they, with regards to all sorts of aspects of working with people on the front line?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think everyone was kind of waiting to see how local authorities would react. I think it's fair to say, without kind of, I don't know, demonising social workers, because that's not what we're about. A lot of social workers we work with are incredible and very dedicated. But I would say even before the pandemic, a lot of the time we have care experienced people that ring up and they need advocacy, they need signposting, because they haven't heard from their PA. Or if you're from my generation, it's a leaving care worker or an aftercare worker, but it's PA. They just haven't heard from them, or they've let them get into arrears, or they're struggling, they can't pay their bills, and that's before this happened. So what we're hearing now, there's actually quite a few people that are really struggling, and they can't get hold of anyone, not even a duty worker, or they can leave a message with someone and no one will get back to them. And in some ways that's business as usual.
Do you think, I'm interested by this, and I'm also, you know, everyone's my colleague, you know, at the end of the day, like you know, that means that there's a mixed bag. I mean, most of the people I work with are absolutely phenomenal. But I'm curious around whether there's actually been a more of a rush and a tendency in local authorities to protect staff first. And in a way, that's a good thing, because I would say you get your own mask on first, make sure you know your life is in order so that you can then function and be the person that you need to be with the people that you're working with. But when everybody does that, and we're now into week 4, coming to the end of week 4 for some people, depending on when you were shut down. I'm at the end of week 4. Then where do you go? If everybody has to go off and do that, you know, so then who's holding that space, and how do we support those people? So that's an interesting one, and you're absolutely right as well. I think where things were not, all that the pandemic has done is actually just accentuate whatever was there already.
Absolutely. I think well, you'll know, I mean, and from personal experience, like there's no two care experienced people that are the same, much like there's no two people that are the same. But there are sort of there's patterns, and people are more likely to already have anxiety disorders, or slightly more likely to have PTSD or have experienced trauma. And actually, a lot of care leavers have already experienced periods of isolation. And I think that's, I mean, I was saying to you earlier before we started this, that actually I feel like, from my experience, periods of isolation have made me a little bit more aware of how to take care of myself now. And
Yeah.
that's just about sharing knowledge with the team as well, because not everybody I never thought I'd be privileged to have been isolated before, but
You never thought you'd say that sentence, did you?
no.
But I can say that sentence with you, and it's been really interesting because I'm getting on a bit these days, and it's a long time ago that I was isolated as a what would now be termed a care leaver through the
Yeah.
legislation. That there wasn't the legislation that did that at the time, and I lived alone in a flat in London, and I didn't know a soul, and it was a very lonely period of time. Not for a huge amount of time, because I then went into a 12-step program and moved in there. But I think I have thought about that period, because I've been on my own here, and I have thought about that period and thought about how strengthening it has been to have experienced an isolation, if you like, or feeling isolated. And let's face it, you can be around lots of people and feel very isolated.
Oh yeah,
Um,
definitely.
yeah, and I think that's something that comes with moving around different families and different residential homes, where you're always on the outside looking into something. And at this stage, it's very good to draw on that experience from a very strength-based approach. But actually, for some people, this may be triggering some of those feelings and thoughts and experiences, and it's not
Absolutely.
able yet to be from a very strengths-based way of thinking about it.
Yeah, and I think there's I know quite a few care experience people that have kind of reached out and just said, like, there's a lot of people within the community, in the care experience community, that are at different stages of their healing. So a lot of people maybe have had, and it's not age dependent, as you know, like there's people that are way further down their journey at 21 than some people that, are in the 60s, 70s. But I think it can be really frustrating. It can make you feel even more isolated when you're looking around and everybody else seems to be like very zen about it and posting all of these incredibly inspiring like memes or whatever they are. And actually you're just sitting there like, you know what? I only managed to get out of bed today. And it's the same thing that we've been saying to a lot of people that we've been supporting anyway, is that there's no one way of achieving things. There is no one pathway to success kind of thing. So if on that day all you can do is get out of bed, that's good. That's good enough. If you can look after yourself just a little bit, that is on the same kind of par as everybody else doing whatever else they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And what kind of calls have you had coming in? What kind of inquiries, what kind of things are you supported with? You mentioned our young man there in prison. What other things are coming to the fore? What's showing up?
I think as talking to the team, I think most of them, like you said, it's the same sort of issues, but it's just more intense. There's a higher volume of them. So generally, we do have like a free phone helpline that people can call into, and that can cover all range of things. So if you just need some advocacy, whether that's with, it can be absolutely anything. If it's speaking to a local authority on your behalf, or educational stuff, that kind of thing, or it's sort of to do with mental health, so we're all first aid mental health sort of trained, the whole team. Or people that need some kind of financial help. So a lot of the time it's stuff to do with people not having enough money to put on gas or electric, or they don't have any food, that kind of thing. And it's always been, it's even before this happened, it's been difficult, because you see a lot of people that are trying their very, very hardest to get their lives on track, and whether it's through benefits being messed around or change of circumstances, again, this is not a generalization, but we do get quite a few people that have had to leave abusive relationships because, you know, the psychology is there. Like a lot of people that have been through any kind of abuse, it can be like a cycle. So we do get quite a few phone calls like that, and then we have to figure out a safe place for them to go, and do you have money to get there, and that kind of thing, and then refer them to certain charities. I would say that those numbers have gone up, and we're getting more phone calls for mental health issues. And it in a way, like, I'm glad that we all finished the training just before this happened. And we have got like a database there with like numbers we can call and do referrals and things like that. Been a few people that have been calling up because they need advocacy for putting in a complaint to their local authority. Again, it's all the usual things, but just a higher concentration of it.
Yeah, lots going through my mind, really, thinking about some of the things that have come up in conversations I've had this week around how do you continue to have those relationships? And actually some people, some staff refusing to have those relationships either at all or without PPE. And I think that's a really interesting issue that's coming up, really. I mean, you know, I've been on lockdown, don't like the phrase, for quite a period of time now, and I go to the shop, and if I go to the shop, there is 6 feet between us, and we're in a queue. But we can still have a conversation. I'm not wearing a mask when I'm 6 foot away from somebody. So I'm curious about what that's about, if we've got people saying they don't want to have those face-to-face, and then really what kind of facilities are in place for people then in local authorities. What, you know, do people know how to use technology like Zoom and Skype? Do they also understand the GDPR situations? And if anyone's listening to this, the best person to talk to about how to do this safely would be Kath Nibbs. Just in terms of understanding the complexities about when we do something like this, who owns this video, who's owning this conversation, how to make sure that there's no one else in the room who can listen to those private conversations. You know, there are lots and lots of issues that are far beyond my reach. Are local authorities making themselves knowledgeable about those? Are they protecting themselves? You know, in a way, it's about how creative were you before, because you're going to need to get really creative now.
Oh yeah, definitely. And like I said, I think I'm surprised that, like, the team is wonderful at Rees. They're not all very, very intelligent, but some of us are technophobes. So to be able to embrace different ways of communicating with each other, let alone other people outside of the charity, I'm very proud of us for being able to adapt. But I have been wondering how other people are going to be doing it, how different organisations are doing it. And the thing is that actually, a lot of the time, you don't need the really complicated software. You don't need even to use Zoom, although and other ones are available. But like even the face-to-face thing, it's good for some people, but you've always been able to use a phone. So as far as I'm concerned, you know, if you have people, like if you have a duty of care, you can pick up a phone. And if you can't, you can arrange for somebody else to pick up that phone. I think so far anyway, we are kind of relying mostly on doing check-ins via email with some of the care experience people that we know are struggling at the moment. Before we all started working from home, a lot of us were sending out emails just to everybody on our list. But that's a very, very long list. So it's more that we're just embracing social media, and our website is about to be upgraded anyway in the next month or two. So, but we are still using the one we've got now. So as much as we can, it's just utilising those different forms of communication.
And what I'm hearing is you talk about targeting. So having those relationships helps you be aware of who might need that extra support as well. And doing those check-ins is so vital. I can't stress that enough. How are you doing those check-ins? And using social media for people who don't want to be checked in but need to know you're there.
Yeah.
I'm also hearing honesty. If people are struggling with some of the aspects of how we do this, and let's face it, lots of people will be, we're all doing this together, then we need an honesty and a transparency about that, so that we know who to go to help us. If we've done this before, who's going to help us to do it? And I wonder perhaps if some people are just very anxious about doing this online stuff, haven't been honest and open about that, because we don't really operate in a culture, I don't think, where people are comfortable going, A, I don't know, or B, help.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. And I think I'm very, very grateful that we are. I work with some women who have got incredible empathy skills, and the men too, but they just don't deal with inquiries. So it is that kind of thing where it's quite natural that people want to check up. And we've been building relationships with care experienced people for a while now. So we're actually, the team that we have now have actually been together for just over a year, maybe less with some of us. So in that year, I think it's kind of paying off now. It's paying off now that there are people that trust us and know that they can pick up their phone, and if we don't know the answer, we'll be pretty honest about it and have to call you back and do some research or signpost to another place that we know does deal with it. But there is always going to be someone there.
And that's the thing, having picked up the phone to a number of different organisations in different ways over the last week, just out of interest really, about how you get hold of anyone. And there are lots of organisations you cannot get hold of anyone. And if somebody with my resources, I have all the capability of trying to make contact with somebody, can't get hold of someone, then somebody with less resources is going to really struggle. And that's something that I think is an absolute priority for organisations. How do you get hold of somebody to talk to? So I'd like to see that. But I'm also interested in robustness that we were just talking about around isolation. And I was thinking about some of the things that I'm hearing people talk about as their experience during this pandemic actually sound, you could be listening to somebody who's care experienced talking about care. So one of those things is uncertainty. How long is it going to last? Is it going to get worse?
Yeah. I mean, I've been told in the past that I have an intolerance of uncertainty, and it's probably the root cause of my own anxiety in the past, just everything. And to a certain extent, like I'm very grateful that I did stuff like CBT and meditation before this started, because it's not going to save you from, everyone's going to have a low moment. Everyone's going to have a moment where this is completely out of my control and I'm not okay with it, and that can be triggering. But to have that toolbox of things there that is just like, actually it's okay, and just ground yourself, and there are things around you that are certain, and there are things around you that you are in control of. But even if you're not, some of it's okay. It doesn't mean if you're not in control it's the worst case scenario. But it does make me think about people that maybe, they haven't had the opportunity to access that toolbox, or they've never thought it's for them. And that is, I mean, even now it's not going to be for everyone, but I mean, I would definitely kind of I would recommend the meditation and the CBT and a grounding kit. It's the first thing I do when we were told to work from home. Is like, at some point, we're probably going to go into lockdown, and I do hate that phrase. What can I have around me that isn't, I'm not going to run out of it. And if I get really, really low, or I feel out of control or uncertain about things, it's going to help calm me down a bit. I mean, I have my own little tricks, but they would be different to everyone.
And that's what I think this experience is really calling from us to do, you know, which is we're going to have to dig really deep. So when stuff comes up, that's the stuff that we need to, I must have said that sentence so many times, but whatever's showing up is what has to be dealt with. But we do that best in relationship. And so that's why I don't really want to hear of organisations, of local authorities, you know, of leaving care teams. I don't want to hear that we can't do anything, we can't communicate, we can't. The very least that you can have is some sort of advice line, is some sort of means of being contactable that everyone can be rotated onto. While we're working at home, that is, you know, absolutely a basic, so that you've got someone you can talk to who can say the things that you've just said, which some things are out of control and some things are not in your control. And actually, and this probably is for later, what's in your, you know, we normally live with so much out of our control, but we think we have control.
I know, it's usually an illusion, but but we like to think that we're a little bit more in control than we are, right?
Absolutely. I mean, just to kind of pull us to the end of the conversation, I will also put in the box underneath your website and your contact number, so that if people want to get in touch, they can. I'm particularly interested as well in encouraging collaboration. I know that we live in a market force environment, but actually, can we get over that, please? This period of time is about how we all come together and work together. So I certainly encourage that in a really big way. But what would be your key kind of messages, or, you know, what would you like to say on behalf of Rees Foundation to anyone who's listening who might want to get in touch?
I mean, I could say a lot. I mean, I'm quite passionate, so I can go off on a real tangent. But I think in general, like, I just want people to know that we are still open, we are still available. And, you know, it's even if worst case scenario, you'll have to leave a message on an answer phone, but somebody will get back to you. And you'll see it all over social media as well as our website, is that we have started something called Time to Talk. So anybody is a free phone number. It will be open between 9 and 5, Monday to Friday. And somebody will pick up that phone. So whether it's about you're worried about money or your mental health, your health, anything, like, somebody will get back to you. Like, so you're not alone in this. I know sometimes it's we're all going to feel like we are, but to an extent it's going to be by choice. If you really need help, or if you just want to have a chat and a cup of tea over the phone, like, there is somebody there. And also, obviously, I'm the arts project coordinator, so I'm going to plug this. We are launching in the next few days. I had to do like a little weird video thing for it to promote it, which was but so it's going to be a new project called Create It. So every 2 weeks we're going to put out like a selection of different like prompts and stimuli, like a video, a spoken word, or a painting, or a photograph. And then care experience people can just choose one or more of them to inspire them to do their own work, and then we're all going to come together and share it online. So it's just about, for me, like, being creative is just another form of communication.
And a healing, you know, it's all,
absolutely.
And I love that, because what you're talking about is a creative way of connection, and we've got to be really creative. We've got to focus on connection, and you're pulling all of that together. So that's lovely, and I hope that lots of people take part in that.
Me too. And I'm doing it too, so I want people to be nice to me.
They'll be lovely to you. It's all right. Listen, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today, and really, really good to hear what you're doing, how you're doing it, and that people can make contact. Thank you.
You're welcome.